Okay, thank you. We took a quick break, and now we're back. And we will welcome to the podium Frank Fiorella and Dr. Kelly Probst, and we do have some child nutrition business to attend to.
Good evening. I have to tell you, first of all, that Frank and I really do not want to be here in front of you all. We do not want to be raising the child nutrition prices for next year for our lunch. But I have to tell you, we need to raise those prices, and it's a requirement by the federal government. And I will quote Mr. Hsu in the last agenda item: when you deal with the federal government, you cross your T's and you dot your I's. So this is one of those situations where the federal government is predicting a 2.7% increase in the consumer index. Basically, the commodities prices are going to increase by 2.7%. That equates closely to 5% or 5 cents for our lunch prices. And what the government has said is, for your free and reduced students, we're going to give you back next year more money. But in order to get that money, you also have to make sure that the regular paying students also feel an increase in their lunch prices. We could have gone up as high as 15% increase and still been within the margins of what the government says. We are going to recommend the lowest amount of increase, which is 5 cents, and we are also not going to recommend any increase in breakfast pricing. So unless we can come up with a plan to come up with $7 million, which is approximately what we get reimbursed from the federal government for the free and reduced students, I'm going to ask that you all recommend that you put this on action agenda. So that's the only thing I have to say, and Frank is here if you have any specific questions regarding this.
Just curious, why are you recommending we put it on the action agenda?
Oh, this is, I'm sorry, the consent agenda.
Oh, okay.
It's
Gotcha.
late.
All right, well, I wanted to make sure I wasn't missing something.
That was just
She just wants to give the presentation again. Frank, do you want to add anything?
A few things. Not that it makes it better, but the 5 cents adds up for a paid student to $9 a year. Child nutrition isn't getting rich over this amount of money. Out of a $12+ million budget, it's $45 extra $1,000 in revenue. So it's not, like I said, like Kelly said, it's not something that we want to do. It's a federal mandate. Federal government gives us about $2.99 for every free student that eats a meal. It gives us $2.59 for every reduced student who eats a lunch, plus the 40 cents that the student has to pay. So this part of the Healthy Hunger Free Kids Act, I know we've been here for the past few years doing this, is their attempt at a moderate way to increase that paid lunch price so that it reaches the amount of money they're giving for a free meal. So they're trying to have that equity in all meals across the board for the cost, for the amount that people have to pay or what they're actually giving us. It's a moving target each year based on the consumer price index, and I can't say that I won't be here next year, but our goal is to keep it as minimal as possible. And with that, we try to provide a well-balanced, healthy meal for everybody.
Okay, thank you. Well, I think last year when we sat here and did this, there was a lot of child nutrition in the news and, whatever. So I don't know if we're at a different spot than we were then, but we'll start with Dr. Phillips.
5 cents seems reasonable, so I'll support that. And I also just want to take a moment to salute you, Frank, and the great job that you're doing in the child nutrition department. So keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. Mr. Harrison?
You're doing great work feeding our children, and that matters a great deal in making them ready for learning each day. So I applaud your work with the programs. The 5 cents sounds like what we've got to do to, among other things, keep the program viable and in effect renew the program or continue getting the funding that is needed. So I do support the 5 cents for the bigger picture that it brings to the county's finances of the food programs. I hope not a unrelated topic. About a year ago, y'all put together a study on food waste, and just me, I would like to see that updated again, or if any recommendations that were made at that time, which had been implemented in that time, could be quantified in terms of the food that is brought to and offered to the children, but is not used, because the other side of paying for the food is the food that does not get consumed and is just not actually used. But I personally would like to see an updated version of that and more granular, detailed analysis of food consumption, if you can consider that in the near future.
We could share that, and also USDA on a national level did a study and has some information as well that we could add to that.
And if you want to blend that into our stuff, but I would like to know what's going on in Cabarrus County.
Absolutely.
Thank you. By that methodology, yeah.
And I want to give Frank kudos that I attended one of his meetings today, and the nutritionist had just been out working in the cafeterias and working with the managers on which foods the students were eating and which ones they weren't. And they were sitting there talking about changing the recipes to making them, more that the students would want to eat them. They do that constantly. So really proud of the work he's doing.
Thanks for taking a proactive approach to that. So, Mr. Shue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. When you consider if a child eats breakfast and lunch, that's $3.50 a day, $17.50 a week for 10 meals. It's the deal of the century when you look at it like that, because it costs us a whole lot more just to get a hamburger at Hardee's. It costs you more than that. So, I'm okay with it. It's something that we have to do, and we're just complying with the federal regulation and all. But the big picture, though, it's still the deal of the day.
Thank you, Mr. Shue. Mr. Shoemaker.
Frank, thank you for giving these children a great meal and working with your staff to provide a great environment. I know your health ratings have been high, and you guys are doing a really great job in that way. This is just part of the process. 2.7% is what they're projecting, and not surprising. That's kind of where I figured we would be. But thank you, and I don't have any problem with this 5%.
Ms. Carpenter?
Oh, well, I never like them to go up. But, it's ironic. I just had somebody say something today, and I said, well, we're going to talk about this tonight, and I'll ask them about it. They were telling me that they were concerned when the children didn't get enough to eat, when you got a great big old guy that's only getting, as they said, for breakfast, just a little bitty bit. And they say if you're going to charge him 5 cents more, you're going to give him some more for breakfast, because he's not getting enough to eat. So if you're going to charge him more, you're going to give that big old guy more to eat for breakfast. And I said, well, I don't know, but I'll check. But the bigger, have we ever, for the bigger guys, do we ever give them more to eat?
The guidelines set up are by grade level, so there's calorie maximums that we have to follow. So all of our menus are nutritionally analyzed, and at that bigger high school level, high school students have the opportunity to take a full cup of fruit and the full cup of vegetable. I would say the majority doesn't take that much, but they do have that opportunity to take that. We can't just give away that extra food for those students. We do have it available if they want to purchase additional items.
Well, the individual told me this. I was under the impression this may be a young person that may be on the reduced program lunch, and this may be the only meal. This child may be a child that I mean, they're really hungry because they are maybe not getting the food. And that's why I wondered if this was made available to them. And this, last year when this comes up, this is where my only concern is, whether the 5 cent is, make sure that this is not going to hamper somebody from being able to afford a meal. As long as that's not the case, I have no problem with it. But my concern is always, I hate it when we're mandated to do something, and just like we just experienced with the reading program, where we're mandated to do something and we're having to take it out of salaries where we could maybe be paying teachers. I hate to do that. And I don't want to have something where I'm increasing salaries that I may be taking food out of children's mouths because I'm charging them 5 cents more. But if you're saying that this is not the case and this is something I got to do, then I suppose I got to do it. It's better than paying $7 million. So tell me that's the case so I can go home and sleep okay tonight.
That's the case.
Absolutely. The goal is, as we talked about food waste, and Kelly talked about it, we are constantly trying to work on recipes to have those items that are student acceptable. With that being said, some of these regulations that have gone on have thrown manufacturers for a loop, and their products aren't caught up to that acceptability. So we have to be creative on our end with recipe development. So we're constantly working towards finding those items that students want to eat instead of passing on the items that are available for them, so that they're not leaving what they can take and going hungry.
Well, like I say, this was brought up to me today about the portion sizes for the bigger people. So, I mean, for this must have been a male person, but anyway, this was someone brought it up, and I said I would bring it up. So if there's ever a way we can make sure that this is done, I brought it up.
And Ms. Carpenter, I wish Courtney was here because she would tell you that the teachers in Cabarrus County would be looking after that student, and they would make sure that that student is taken care of.
Well, that's what I was. This happened to be, administrator that brought this up to me, but this is one of the things, though. I want to make sure that our children are fed, and I'm sure that is the case. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Carpenter. Mr. Walter?
Got to say thanks again. You've really done a lot of homework on this one and provided us a lot of information that explains it. I'm one last year still don't like being mandated and having to up our costs. As Mr. Harrison was talking about, we can reduce some waste, and we've covered that cost pretty easily. How many free and reduced students do we have currently?
We're at 43% now.
43% of our students.
Yes, sir.
And I guess my other question is, I didn't want to get sidetracked here, but we had some pilot projects with a free universal breakfast. How is that going? And
We have currently 3 programs that are doing universal breakfast. Winecoff, Irvin, and Royal Oaks. And after assessing Winecoff, since they've done it the longest, it's been a very positive. Our revenue has gone up. It's actually increased participation in lunch at all 3 schools, from early information on Irvin and Royal Oaks. But at Winecoff, it's actually increased lunch participation as well. And I think it's just knowing that we provide meals and that they're good, and knowing that they can get lunch as well. So it's benefited our department and the students, in my opinion. I know that at all of those schools, our fruits and vegetable, mostly fruit consumption has gone up an awful lot, and especially at breakfast time.
again, I don't particularly like to have to raise the prices, but I do appreciate you keeping it to the 5 cents.
Okay, thank you for your comments, board members. This is typically in years past where I would make some snarky comment about the federal government, but I think it's late and we'll just move on.
Mr. Chairman, I know why we speak of free and reduced lunch being 43% of our population, but I kind of wish we'd start talking about the actual real flesh and blood 12 to 13,000 students that 43% actually equates to. When we talk about 43%, that number I know has regulatory and financial and budget and accounting sheet, and purposes, but it's really 12 to 13,000 real kids that we're talking about who don't get enough to eat that this program satisfies.
Okay, so with that said, we okay for consent? I mean, basically, we got to do it, so everybody's okay. All right, Eileen, we will put that on the consent agenda, and after a 4-hour and 15-minute wait, we will ask Chris Louder to the podium.
Okay, good evening. At last meeting or the meeting before, I was kind of bragging on you guys. We had 34 policies that we'd worked on this year, which is quite a bit. And we got our last update here in the last 4 weeks, and there are 36 new policies to add to those 34. Some of which we actually had to pull 5 of the policies that we had on first and second read because there were so many changes in policy. And many of those are personnel, teacher tenure, some of those major changes that we actually held to the last group because we anticipated there may be some change. So we'll have quite a few more over the next months as we move forward. So we did pull all the ones that were under review, and now we're just down to 3 new first read policies, which I think are pretty simple. The first one is automated external defibrillators, which it came up for policy review 6 or 8 months ago. It was just one that we were actually ahead of a lot of districts when we first put AEDs in. And so before we adopted a policy, we just wanted to review ours and make sure we were in good shape. Donna's department reviewed that. And so there's no major change there. It's basically what the state recommended. We're just formally putting it forth as a policy. The second one is the drug-free and alcohol workplace, which was recommended from PLS, and then Ms. Stone actually worked on coordinating their recommendations with our personnel recommendations. So if you have specific questions there, she can probably answer them, but she just wanted to make sure they lined up with what we do with our drug and alcohol policy. And the one that we probably worked on the most, especially as a policy committee, was distribution and display of non-curricular materials. If you remember, 2 or 3 years ago, we had quite a big policy revision. We just had elementary schools that, in particular, which were being required to send home tons and tons and tons of flyers all the time, and so we limited that, and ultimately they are not required to send hardly any of those home now. There's a place in the school for those. Again, something that Ms. Stone's worked on quite a bit. But the one caveat we came there was the county manager and our Parks and Rec department and the superintendent had really tried to work together to make sure that we were helping facilitate some of our county government things, in particular with Parks and Rec. And so we worked it on a way that we all could agree with, and that Parks and Rec was happy with, and also our attorneys, to say that 4 times a year, basically quarterly, we're going to provide a way that government agencies can send something home to make sure we help support those. And so we wrote that policy to do that.
I think basically that co-aligns, at least on the right, 4 seasons,
Exactly.
kind of sports season. So,
Yes.
All right, so for first read, instead of going down the line, let me just ask, does anybody have a comment that they want to make about any of these policies? Okay, see none? That's good. That's a
very
good
good.
night's work. Okay, that's a first. So we'll move on to second reading of, we'll move on to 4.06, second reading. So go right ahead.
Again, I'm not aware of any questions that you guys had. This one's been up once before. We did pull, I think, 3 of these or 4 of these. I'm sorry, 1 of these. We had to pull several of the first read, which was probationary teacher. And again, you guys are very aware of a lot of the changes there. So the personnel changes will be coming up in the next 3 or 4 months, with the major changes lining up with probationary review and teacher tenure. Those are most of where the changes are.
Okay. All right. Any comments on these? Good, good. So we'll put second reading on consent agenda. Everybody okay with that? Fantastic. Well, that's what we'll do then. Let's see, let me mark that down. Thank you. Thank you very much. And we will move on. 4.07, we'll ask Mr. Whitkey to come back and look at the roof replacement at Royal Oaks Elementary School.
Hello. This was a project that, as you may recall, was funded by the county using a portion of the remaining one-time funds that they had given us. These were remaining pieces of projects from the whole group that they had given us. And we bid the project recently, March 25th. The lowest bidder was Triad Roofing. We asked the consultant to take a look at their background and all, and we got a vote of thumbs up on the firm. We had not worked with them before. Apparently the consultant had, and he did check references as well, and they came up as a good firm. So we are recommending them. The low bid was $190,108, and that includes bid alternates 1 and 2. It's kind of interesting. I will just point out under alternate 1, this is the first time we're going to be trying the fiber, I can't read it, fiber type, I think it is 50 mil XT. We've had a sample in our office, and literally we couldn't get it to be penetrated. We were hitting it with everything sharp we could find, and it's pretty indestructible. So, with all the penetrations we've had problems with roofs in the past, we thought we would try this. We didn't. The alternate cost, as I say, if I can find it right in front of me, should Triad. An alternate 1 was $32,000, and I think if we can ensure that the life, thank you, ensure the life of the roof a few additional years with that sort of membrane, so much the better. And then we just, alternate 2 raises all the curbing for all the equipment. Curbing is what the HVAC systems and everything sit on. And we could leave it in place, but they have in the standards of building design for roofs, you should have a minimum of 8 inches clear below the bottom of the material and the roof surface. And in this case, it was going to be below that number if we left them as they were. So it is a recommendation to take that alternate as well, and they'll raise all of the equipment up to the desired height. So.
Fantastic. Board members, any comments or questions about the roofing bid? Rob, we'll start with you.
It says it starts in spring break and finishes in summertime. How do you do that during, it's not during school hours, it's after school hours?
It is after school hours, yes, sir.
Any other comments? Carolyn?
How much would we allocated for this? Are we up or under?
I think
We're under. The whole project is $225,000, as I recall. And we have, I believe it was an $11,000 or $12,000 fee, so together we'll still be well below the total amount of money.
Okay, good, thanks.
Okay. All right. Anybody?
Just
you
one
got
quick,
a comment?
where's Triad located at, Mr. Wickey?
I was afraid you were going to ask me that. I want to say out of the Raleigh area.
Well, I'm sort of thinking that when you say Triad, I was thinking the Raleigh, Durham, Greensboro area,
That's
but
where
just out of curiosity, we didn't have any Cabarrus County bidders or?
Let's see. DAFCO, I believe, is they bid our work before, I know. I believe they were local, and Affordable is not local, but they bid a lot of our work. Not too many locals bid this particular one.
Well, it's a shame when we got work like this being offered and we don't have our Cabarrus County people out trying to bid on it, because it would be nice to, send it to Cabarrus County businesses, that kind of thing. But I'm okay with it.
is a local. And
Which one is that?
Lefebvre, but they chose not to submit a bid. They came to the pre-construction.
Yeah, I
bid.
see that there where it's marked out. Yes, okay.
Oh, Winston-Salem, okay, yeah.
All right.
Oh,
Thank
I'm
you,
sorry,
Mr. Wick.
Triad is Winston-Salem. Not quite as far. So.
Okay. Any other comments? Can I get a nod of the head on consent? Nod of the head. We're on consent. Okay, fantastic. And we will thank you. We'll keep you at the podium and move on to the installation of security vestibules at the Mary Frances Wall Center along Preschool, Mount Pleasant Elementary, and Wolf Meadow.
And these projects were bid, and we had the apparent low bidder, which was Black Construction, unfortunately found an error in their bid, and they asked to be excused from the bids. And that happens. We immediately, when you see that kind of difference between, 79,000 compared to the next lowest, which is 110,000, we begin to wonder, because the scale of these projects was not such that it was so big you couldn't get your hands around it. So we are very comfortable with the second bidder, which is Holden Building Company. We are, even at the higher bid of Holden, we are still within the budget for the schools. And we would recommend going with the second lowest bidder, in this case, Holden Building Construction. They're out of Greensboro, and they've done quite a bit of work for us recently. So,
Board members, any comments on this one?
Just a question why the Wall Center is so much more than the other ones.
yes, we've got to do some reconstruction. We've got to get this to work correctly, we've got to do some wall construction within the, if you're familiar with that space, as you walk in currently, there's what was the old media center. We're going to punch I don't know if the final design went with, we were either going to do an entrance door into that space from outside, or else create one from inside the vestibule as you walked in. I don't know how they finally decided the design would go, but it meant once you got inside, then they had another wall, another partition that created this airlock, if you will. And so it got a bit more expensive because of the additional work within the building.
Okay, thank you.
Any other comments?
You
Carol?
did confirm we are still within budget?
Yes,
What
ma'am.
okay,
Yes,
thank you.
Anybody else? Okay, David?
Just that I plainly am on Facebook way too much, but recently read someone's comment about they're just spending too much money on all those security things. And I think, my gosh, our first and foremost obligation on this board is to ensure the safety and the well-being of the children and the staffs in all of our facilities, and this effort is continual, and I commend you, for working on these projects like this, and it's real and it's tangible, and God help us if we don't do things like this. So this is terribly important, and I greatly do support all of your efforts to work down to the best and the best price, but also the best quality and the greatest security that you're ensuring for our children. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, David. Any other comments? I guess the only other,
Well,
go ahead.
just real quickly, I think with this and the adding of the 19 officers that we have, or will have, the security officers, I think the safety of our children, especially at their elementary levels, I'm just very pleased. And David, I have to agree with you 100%, and I think the parents, these are our treasures, and this is what we're here to do, and I couldn't agree with you more.
Yep, thank you, Carolyn. And you talk about, you even add on the cameras. We've done the vestibules and the cameras over the last 2 years or so. We've done a lot. I mean, we scraped it together. We used our own funds, I think, for a lot of it. We got some county funds and some grant money. So, I mean, to do all that, I think clearly we at least know or have a vision of that's what we're trying to do and trying to accomplish. So, okay. Anybody object for consent? Okay. We'll put that on the consent agenda. We'll keep Mr. Whitkey at the podium, and we'll talk about the fee for Fanning Howie 4.09.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did negotiate with Fanning Howie, and they did, I'm going to say, give us several concessions. One is that they have agreed to do a total of 22 of the schools, of the oldest schools, which would be the list. There's a list. There we go. Thank you, Kelly. This first group at the top of the page represents the 22 schools that would have a complete investment of time for. They will certainly study all of the equipment and all of the spaces in the schools. They will look at the spaces from the standpoint of educational guidelines and requirements for the space to determine whether or not that it's adequate. And then in addition, we'll also take a look at the condition of all the materials and finishes, et cetera, and the equipment as well. In the second set, which is more to the next level down, I guess it's Yep, that group there, the 10 schools, I should say excluding the blue lines, excluding those 10 schools will have a review of the equipment. They will, and I should mention, they're going to basically barcode all of our equipment for us so that when we come back in, it's not like a revelation to figure out what the equipment is. It'll all be done for us. It'll all be tagged. So that in itself is a major plus for us. As you know, I think we've talked a lot about the fact that they're going to be doing this on a software program that is compatible with School Dude, and we will be melding those two once they get the work done in the field. They'll bring that in, and I don't know how they do a mind meld between two computers, but they're going to do that and make it all work for us so we can bring it up in our School Dude system here. And so it'll be definitely a living document for us. And our charge as we go forward is to update that information as we do modifications and improve equipment down the road. But it'll be a great start for us, a wonderful building block for everything we do from this point forward. And what they also agreed to do, Kelly, I think, mentioned it earlier, they have agreed to incorporate all of the Mark III findings on the security analysis that Mark III did for us. So for these schools, they will incorporate those recommendations and also attach a cost to each of those items as well. So it'll be I think a fairly, I will say very inclusive, but also a substantial undertaking. They still are telling us they will get it done by June. Matter of fact, they're chomping at the bit because they really need to get going if they're going to, meet those dates. But they feel they still can do that. They're going to bring another team in and help them have a few more boots on the ground to get that done. But what I like is they're all working for the same software program, so there's not a lot of, there's a judgment call certainly as to whether that piece of paneling is going to remain on the wall or, if it's fixed well enough or not. But that said, they're all looking at the same issues, the same conditions, and hopefully it will be fairly consistent throughout the study. And I did want to say, they reduced their price down to $317,000. It leaves $15,000, and I'm asking for that money to be retained in the project because we're still dealing with, we have to buy a software add-on to our system at School Dude. And there's some potential for additional costs that we don't yet anticipate. There may be floor plans that they have to create that because we simply don't have them in our system, or other things like that that we don't know yet. So,
Okay, but the overall number is staying. You basically asked for to keep the overall with the difference being a contingency.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yes, sir.
Board members, we'll go down the line. This is a big deal, so we'll start with Dr. Phillips and we'll go from there.
I just picked up on your last thing about floor plans that we may not have. We now have a new requirement from the state that we have to provide floor plans to the local police department, fire department,
Yes,
something
sir.
like that.
Yes,
So this will help us with that too. So we
yes,
kind of
absolutely.
kill two birds with one stone.
Right now, what we've been doing is filling in with what we call fire plans. Those are acceptable, but it would be much better if we had floor plans. Fire plans are okay, but they're not absolutely accurate in terms of scale. And floor
see.
plans are much better.
Great.
Thank you.
All right, thank you,
I'm
Dr.
eager
Phillips.
to see this project carried out.
Thank you. So are we.
David?
The dates on these building remind me of the Noah movie that I recently went to, and I'm glad to see that some of our buildings are not older than Methuselah. Trying to add some levity here at 10:30 at night for what that was worth. But now this is consistent with our negotiations and our discussions with Fanning Howey a few month or more ago.
Yes, sir.
Very little has changed in the whole discussion or negotiations with that vendor to do this work. We had a great deal of confidence in them at the time, and we're pretty much following through with the same understandings that we discussed.
Yeah, as I say, the only thing they did is they actually committed to work to take the Mark III information and incorporate that, which was really a concern for us because we have the information, but we don't know what it costs. So they've been gracious enough to incorporate that as part of their work and still meet the dates and still stay within our budget. So
about June or July, they're going to give us thick old book of all this. We only need one, or I don't need a copy. But
Right, it'll be electronic as
True.
well as, yeah,
A big
exactly,
PDF.
that's right. That's correct.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Shue?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Wiki, and I had made mention of this when we were talking about this months ago, and one of the things that I did not want was us to have this humongous book like we've seen from another county.
Right.
Well, it's going to be digital now, you say. It's going to be all,
Yes, sir.
and that's good. But the question that I have is, we talked earlier about the skilled number of laborers that we have, 43, I believe, and the study said we needed 72, so we're low already for the ones to get out and do the work. And that's an issue we're going to have to deal with at some point, hopefully real soon.
Yeah.
But the issue that I want to talk with you about is, obviously, we're going to be getting a ton of information from Fannie, this
Howard.
company, Fannie, Hanny, whatever. We're going to be getting a lot of information from them. With the current staff that you have, now obviously they manage the school dude program, I'm sure. But now we're going to integrate all this. Do you have enough sufficient staff to integrate all of this tons of information into the school dude and continually integrate cost and all of that to keep this a living document, keep it alive rather than just sitting on, in the computer somewhere, not being used? And I mean, I'm just concerned that we don't have enough staff, and have you made provisions for that to make sure that we got enough staff to handle all of this information, not only when we get it, but on an ongoing basis, to see to it that it stays updated and it's live pretty much at any given time? And that's a concern that I have. I mean, I'm okay with doing it because it's going to give integrity. We've beat that bush already. It's going to give integrity to what your department's already been telling us for a couple of years now. And it's an expensive thing to go out and do. And I know I have personally received criticism, say, oh, you're spending $300,000 to tell us what we already know. And that basically is true, but we don't have the detail that this is going to give us, which is going to give us the credibility and the integrity that we need, just like the salary study. And even though we haven't really got off the ground with that good yet, but it's still there. It's a living document, and we didn't spend the money uselessly, and we're not going to spend this money uselessly either. But we need to make sure, though, that we can do our part once they get their part done.
Mr. Chair, I would say, we recognize what it's going to take to get the full value out of the software and the information we gather. We have in our budget request for expansion a couple of positions. One was the lead person for maintenance that would oversee the maintenance area, but also this information, so that every time a work order would be going out, it would be matched up with what information we have for the school. It would be, and I will say, a lot of our people, if you ask them what the piece of equipment they're going out to see, they can tell you pretty much based on their experience. What my concern is, that's known as institutional experience. It's when that person leaves, that part of our institution and that history goes with him. And so, in one case, her. And so, we want to make sure that we have that institutional knowledge saved and retained, and we're doing that through this process. And thus, when a new person comes on board, he or she does not have to sit there for 5 or 10 years learning it. It's available to them immediately, and that's the benefit of that. But we've asked for several positions in the new budget request that would help support this effort. So, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shue. Mr. Shoemaker.
Well, the original scope of work was 22 schools, was it not?
Yes, it was.
And we've ended up with 32.
That's correct. Yes.
So that's a great boon. And they're going to literally barcode every piece of equipment in the field that they come across.
I said
they
barcode. I know they said code. I don't know what they meant. I use the word barcode. But
okay. So you don't know if they're going to put actually a scannable.
I thought that's one of the things we talked about originally. I don't know if that's what they're talking about, if they have another process that they use. But it is some way of identifying the last time it was checked and what the unit is. There's some way of reading
Say
that.
if they were going to code it, with a readable something a reader could read, then our techs could actually begin that process
Right.
of reading the equipment as they go in the field and populating their work orders
Right.
without having to worry about finger errors and that type of thing. But
Yep.
still, it's huge, and the piece that you're going to buy as far as school dude, which you'd like to purchase, is the preventive maintenance
Yes.
component.
That's correct.
And for you that don't know, the preventive maintenance component allows you to schedule your equipment for review and actually create a schedule, and it will actually spit out work orders when that schedule comes up, rather than them having to go through and look for where our work order where a piece of equipment might be due.
I give you a very simple example. We have about a half a dozen people, PMs as we call them, that go out and do a lot of the maintenance on our HVAC systems. And a couple of those fellows are responsible to change all the filters. Now, that doesn't sound like much when you think about your system at home. You have 1 or 2 or maybe 4 filters. Well, our schools have dozens of filters in them because we have dozens of pieces of equipment. Well, if one of those people happens to be ill for a week or on vacation and somebody doesn't cover that process, that weekly process of change out, you wouldn't believe how muddled things can become. And suddenly it goes back to, well, were you there? Did you take care of unit number 3 or was I supposed to? We've had those problems. Those will go away with this system because the system will remember. And granted, it's important to have human beings involved in it, but I can tell you that when you're talking about hundreds of filters and which goes where and when do we order the last batch for that particular school, that can become very confusing. And I think the system's going to do wonders, and that's just a simple example of it. Sure thing.
Great, thank you, Mr. Shoemaker. Ms. Carpenter?
Well, as we've been talking about putting people to work and about, it's been talked about all night tonight. And one of the reasons, and I've come back and said that I've brought up a couple ways that this study could be done, and one of the ways this study could be done is you could take 3 people and put them to work temporarily and paying them as much as $45,000 a year, put 3 people to work, additional people to work. You could put them temporary to work, and that would still only be $135,000, and that's a whole lot less than 300 and something. And just put them on this project by themselves, and they could be locally, and get the job done. And then you've still got the other ones. Go ahead. Did that mean 45 times 3? Is that not right?
Your math is correct.
Is that not right?
Yeah.
3 people doing it just by themselves. That'd be the project, and that would put 3 people to work, and that could be done. You would still have your information that you need, and I'm sure you've got some people that can. You've got people on your staff right now that's doing it. Is that not correct?
They're not doing what we're talking about, but
But I'm making a point with this. But that's one of the. I just think that's a whole lot of money. We've been talking about teachers' jobs. Mr. Phillips was down there saying, don't want to spend $130,000, for taking it out of the teachers' fund. Well, again, I look at it in the same way. $331,000, I could put a lot of teachers to work. And if I took 135 and put that in this study and let those people do that, then that would save me a lot of money that I could put teachers to work. And that's where I come from. I'm always thinking about teachers' assistants or teachers to decrease these class sizes. I see that in that aspect. That's just my feeling with that.
And I appreciate your feeling, Mrs. Carpenter, but I have to say, we've focused a lot on education, as we should here. But I can tell you, and my business for 46 years has been taking care of buildings, designing them, building them, repairing them, and maintaining them. We have to stop what we're doing, take a breath, and say it's time to repair what we have, or soon we won't have any buildings to send children to be educated in. We'll start closing doors because the ceilings are falling in because the rain's coming through, or we'll start not meeting code and simply have no funds to repair them and have to close the schools. And that's a dramatic statement, I understand that, but I've seen it happen. in my time. And there's been a very big need to build new schools. I'm not saying that. But along the way, someone should have said, along with this bond for new schools, let's put some money in for maintaining the old ones. Now we're so far down a road that we can't catch up by spending a little bit of money to save a bunch. What we need to do is have people that can come in and visually inspect a building and know whether or not it makes sense. The long and the short of it is this is going to give us a great database for what we have in the buildings. But my expectation is we're going to gain a lot more from Fanning Howey. We're going to gain their ability to look at a building and say, a long school may not work as a long school program any longer. We may have to move that. But what can we use that building for? And that's where the value of their engineers and their architects and their design team comes into play. I can't take people off the street and pay them $45,000 and expect to get that out of them. They may know well how to maintain a mechanical system or an electrical system or a plumbing fixture, but they're not design oriented. They're not people who look beyond the piece of equipment. And that's what a firm like this does. They certainly have the nuts and bolts knowledge of everything they're looking at, but they go way beyond the technician. They go to the design side and look towards the future and say, okay, that is a great piece of equipment, but you've got 10 of them, and the problem with them is that they're no longer the most efficient. And if you replace them with energy efficient equipment of this nature, you're going to save this much money. We're going to have the ROIs. We're going to have the information we need to start helping to sell the idea of making change now, not later. Because honestly, you can't wait a lot later. There isn't too many more tomorrows before some of those bad things really start to happen to some of these schools. And that's my concern. This expenditure is going to be the cheapest money you ever spent in terms of what value it will bring to this county. And that much I will stake my reputation on. Union County spent more than we're spending to get the document for approximately the same amount of schools and the same square footage. So we're getting, in my opinion, as much detail, if not more, and certainly in terms of the database interface and all of that, it's certainly more than what they got. So I think there's value here for the dollar, and I think it's competitive, very competitive, what else I've seen in the market.
Well, it's one of those things, if I always look at why do we always have to be like everybody else? It says, if Johnny went and jumped off the bridge, are you going to go jump off the bridge too? Well, I don't think so. But, one of the things is I want to just make sure that, if, you made the comment, if we're in such bad shape with our buildings, then, or if we are that bad, then maybe we shouldn't be building anything at all. We better be out there repairing the heck out of the buildings we got then, instead of opening up new ones. I mean, I know we're crowded and everything, but if our buildings are ready to fall down on our heads, then we better be out there hammering the heck out of them and start repairing them and not building one thing then at all, if that is the case we're in. I mean, I'm serious, because we better be out there. If we are that far behind, then why go build something else if we're that far behind? I'm just laying it to you. If that is where we are, then we better stop where we're at. So
Okay, I didn't know if there was a question coming after that or not, so I was waiting.
What he just told me, I better stop.
Well, I think there are buildings that we've had buildings where we've had to shut down classroom use because of the amount of water coming into them, and that's reality. And if that doesn't tell you something, where I'm sitting, I don't know what else I can say. I think you need to build new schools when you need to build new schools. That time is now. I think you need to repair schools when you need to repair them. That time is definitely now. And I agree wholeheartedly with the chairman said. Our job, your job, mine too, and your support, is to tell the county commissioners what this school district needs. It's their problem to figure out how to pay for it. We're not wasting money. God knows all they have to do is take a tour of the existing buildings, and that'll clearly demonstrate that fact. And we simply need more money to operate 50 school facilities, 40 here, 10 up north. So it's,
Yeah. Mr. Walter?
And I can see how 317,000 is a lot of money to, for the outside person.
332.
332, okay?
Okay.
Do you want to keep the extra, otherwise you'd come back with us with a change order or something?
No, I'm saying the fee is 317. I'm asking to keep 15,000 as a contingency.
Okay, if
So,
we didn't do that, you'd have to come back with a change order or something.
yes, for certainly for the software, yeah.
Yeah, and this is more than just an inventory of equipment. Is that-
Oh, my goodness, yes.
So it's much more than that. So there's a lot of value, as you were talking about. It's going to give us a list of what the needs are. So we can have this document here that'll have the actual numbers and not estimates and,
Absolutely.
okay, so that's the value, I think, that really comes with this thing.
Yes,
And
sir.
that and all the integrations that you were talking about with the software integrations.
Right.
And to help with the preventive maintenance as well. And I guess all this extra stuff that they have with the expertise and I don't know, I wrote something else down here, but I can't read my handwriting, so I'll pass on the rest of it. But thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Walter. Carolyn, I guess the only comment I'd make, it's not an either or. We've got it's our responsibility to take care of both sides of that equation. And so the fee that we have, I think you've done a nice job of negotiating. We're getting some of the benefit that you guys, I was not at the meeting when we were deciding, but when you guys called and said, hey, there's a technology piece here that we weren't really going into it sure of, but well, that looks like that's going to turn out to be something to help us. But I mean, just going, not to beat a dead horse, but the balance between new and maintenance and new or whatever, I mean, we built the same number of schools in a pretty short window, basically 1.5 terms of a board member. From 2005 to 2011 was 11 schools. We built 11 schools from 1967 to 1999. So, I mean, you're talking about the whole dynamic has changed, and we got behind, and we're not going to catch up anytime soon, but we've got to start trying to plug away at it. And this document is at a high level, and we've talked about all this when we were trying to decide whether we want to do this. This is at the engineering architecture level. This is not three guys off the street. So, I mean, I understand where you're coming from on teachers, but, we get accused sometimes of falling in love with the sticks and bricks and not worrying about what goes on inside. Well, what goes on inside is of the utmost importance. But there is no inside if we don't build something and maintain it. It goes away. And so then we have a real problem. So with that being said, are we okay for consent?
I would like to put it on.
Well, you're not going to be here.
Well, but all of y'all will be voting on it. I'd like to see it on the vote.
Okay. We will do action for Carolyn on 4.09. All right. We will move on. We will keep you at the podium. 4.10, sewer line ownership transfer to City Concord.
This got, well, first let's go to, I'll try the very first, no, I'm sorry, the overview map. That would be the best one, I think. Yeah. If you don't mind, can I use the map? Mouse, excuse me. What this is really displaying is this piece of property outlined basically roughly here is C.C. Griffin Middle School. And this piece of property here out to the street is Patriots Elementary School, side by side. And what is currently the route of the sanitary sewer, the strictly sanitary sewer, is this green line that you see that serves both schools. Actually, this is, and this is also the sewer that the city would like us to convey to them. And the reason being, right now, there's a line that runs from here back over to the Patriots Elementary School to this manhole. And this little green line up here is the line that Ryan Holmes has run to the nose of our property at the street on Holden Avenue. What they want to do is, and this is the easement we granted them, they want to come in, cut across the road underneath, and then come into this manhole. And We said, that's fine, we've agreed to do that. We've granted them an easement to do that. The difficulty for the city is they don't want a public user, if you will, a developer tying into a private sewer line. And so they are recommending that we convey this sewer to them. I want to explain, first of all, that's not unusual at all. From a school district perspective, it makes sense because we still retain the land. We grant them what we call a utility access easement. And they then have responsibility to, in effect, own and maintain that sewer line. We're not in the business of maintaining sewer lines. We don't have the staff nor the equipment to do that. So it's been a good working relationship. We do that at all the new schools that we've built. For some reason, we didn't do it here. I don't know why. That was sort of decided before I got here, and I was just told to connect the manhole. I mean, to connect to that manhole and be done with it. And that's what we did when we built Patriots. But the city has a point. I can understand that when they're getting flow from as many houses as they're talking about, they want to make sure that where those houses connect into is something that is maintainable and done well. And so it is our recommendation that we do, in fact, convey that. I believe we talked about this back when we were building the school. The city and I both thought that we were taking care of it. As we find out, neither of us did. And so we're back again asking you to just confirm that we can do that. The other paperwork that's attached to this, I'm afraid is not exactly what it should be. It has if you look at the legal descriptions, they include one for water, electrical, plumbing, or sanitary and storm. Well, we're only talking about sanitary. We're not talking about the other three that I know of. I think the only thing that the city is really looking for is the sanitary sewer. That's all they want to take on, and that's all they really are concerned about. And that's all we want to grant them. The rest of it is not to be worried about. So we'll correct all the paperwork. The county, the city will prepare the transfer document, which is what actually Phil Runkle from Womble Carlisle suggested that they do, because they do it quite well, and they're used to it. So he said he'll review it for us, of course, but he said let the city prepare that, and then Phil will prepare the easement, which is what he normally does for us for the establishment of the utility easement for the city. So if that's all agreeable to everyone, and if I've made it clear, I'd be happy to answer questions.
Okay, board members, any questions on the sanitary sewer easement? Rob, you got a question?
Just a couple. It's not really related to that. It was related to our conversation a couple months back when we granted the other easement about connecting the two schools. Is that still ongoing?
The connecting of the two schools.
So we had discussions about a second entrance or a second way out.
There is a road bed laid in there now. If you came out there, you could drive on it.
So you can go between the two schools.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And then my other second, if obviously I work for the City of Concord, it's the Aviation Department. Don't know if any of you all have an issue with me voting on this or not.
I don't. I mean, doesn't have anything to do with aviation. So, Carolyn, you have any comments on that? Barry?
No.
Lynn?
Lynn, on the green line there where the existing sewer is now at the bottom left-hand corner, is that red dotted line, is that where it's feeding into the main sewer?
Yes, sir. I'm sorry, I should have said that.
All right. Now, so what I see is happening here is, it's a good thing that the city's going to take over on this. But the problem that I see with it is all of that land out there that doesn't have sewer now will have sewer. Mm-hmm. And so you know what that's going to do to the school systems out there. But the new buildings, new houses, more students.
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah. It's going to bring a lot more students because there's a ton of property out there. And I was on the board when we did this, and I remember this particular property here was involved in a foreclosure. The bank owned this property, and somehow the county ended up getting it, and we ended up getting it from the county.
Because that was a question that our attorney asked.
Yeah,
Phil was
that's
wondering
it.
where it came from.
This
By
is
the property for Patriots?
For Patriots.
Oh, for Patriots.
For
I'm sorry.
Patriots, yeah.
Okay.
But this all came in together here. But what this is going to do is just going to open up. If you look at the top up there where the road comes in, and we tie it in, as you said there, they tie it in. Well, that whole section out there, all the way to the river, will be opened up now to sewer. And there's room for hundreds and hundreds of houses out there, which will equate to hundreds of children. Yep. And so more for the school board and for the county to deal with. But I'm glad the city's going to take over, and I have no problem with it because we don't want to be working on sewers.
No. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Wiki.
Thank you, Lynn. David, do you have any comments? No. Dr. Phillips?
My only comment is it's nice to see an example where two government entities in this county work cooperatively together with respect for the benefit of all.
Thank you.
Well said. Okay, everybody okay for consent on that? Nod of the heads? Consent.
Thank you.
Thank you. And we will turn the page. We've got you one more time, 4.11. Oh, you know what? I want to make sure, I was looking at the agenda that I got at our agenda review meeting when I said earlier that the thing that we would add for what Dr. Phillips said, I said would be 4.11. We already have a 4.11. So it will be 4.15. So I now have the correct one in front of me. We added some things to the agenda. So we will now be at
Thank you.
4.11.
Thank you. I had hoped that we had a broader picture, but this is a piece of land that runs down, I'm trying to explain that. If you're familiar with Coulter and Webb, there's the Coulter building, and then the lower one is the Webb building. This is sort of right behind the Webb building, and if you looked directly behind, if you were standing right behind the Webb building, you'd look up a grassy hill. And the kids play out there and they have fun. And that part of this hill is this piece of land, right? That's kind of a trapezoid or whatever you want to call it. I used to know my shapes better than that. But this piece of land is, as you may recall, when we were talking about the sewer line that we were going to be running through here, there's a stormwater line that we have to replace. It currently runs underneath one of the buildings. We're going to replace that and come around. We're going to cross over what was once city land, and they've turned over to us, and then come, if I use the mouse, it would work better, basically come around off of Spring Street, down along this property line, and then instead of going around this property, which would take quite a bit of construction and a number of what they call structures or manholes, with this, we would simply set one structure here and run right across to another one there, substantially reducing the amount of piping and structures that we would have to build. What Dave Burnett, and I was hoping he was here, but he's had to leave. He's negotiated with the landowners, and in effect, they've negotiated a price, if I had it here, I'd say what it is, of $10,000 plus closing costs for this piece of property, roughly 9,200 square feet. And I can tell you that the savings alone in terms of time and construction work, you will save that amount of money by purchasing this land. The homeowners are very receptive to it. The only thing that they did ask us to do is we will have an easement where the piping comes along this piece of property and then cuts across here. And because their existing historic building is a shed, I guess it was an old cookhouse, it's literally within a foot of the property line. They just asked that we would grant them permission that when they have to paint it or maintain it, that we would allow them to come on our property to do that. And I think that that's a reasonable request. But it's up to the board as far as accepting the price so we can proceed with the purchase.
And board members, we've talked about this previously on a couple different occasions, and I think the numbers stayed exactly the same as what we've talked about before. So
That's a no-brainer in my opinion.
yeah, Rob, Carolyn, Barry, Lynn.
Only thing I'd ask, will we be able to use this land for anything? I mean, we've got the easement going across it, and we've got the sewer going under it and all that. Will we be able to use it for a playground, a grassy area, or anything like that?
Sure.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
But we're not, are we using it now?
Yes.
We are already using this.
Yeah,
then.
matter of fact, I mean, we mow it.
But it's not ours,
It's
but
not
they let us use it. So like a
Exactly.
gentleman's agreement, that type thing, maybe.
Exactly.
Well, this is going to make it official, so we can put a fence up to whatever we want to with it.
Yes,
That's, like Rob said, it's a no-brainer.
David, Jeff, everybody good? Consent? All right, we'll move, we will put 4.11 on the consent agenda, and we'll move on to 4.12.
I don't believe there's an attachment to this, and the reason being, we are in the process of negotiating with the landowner as it relates to the new elementary school. And this is a $5,000, looking for the language, excuse me. Yeah, it's earnest money, thank you. It's a $5,000 earnest money payment so that we can finalize negotiations with this particular landowner and purchase the land and bring that back to you next week to resolve. But we need to hold the land, and this is the way we can do that, so that we can at least bring that to you for a final decision next week. So,
Okay. Board members, any questions about that?
Yeah, but do we need to vote on this since he needs his money to hold the land until he can bring it back to us? Would we not need to vote on this right now so he can get this money right now? Because you need this money
I do,
now
yes,
so
yes,
you
ma'am,
can
thank you.
bring it.
Yes, ma'am, you're right.
Because you can't bring it until you
That's
have the money.
exactly right,
So
thank you.
I'm saying this needs
That's
to be
right.
voted on now.
Okay. Yep.
No, but we do have to give him the check.
They're going to hold the,
Yeah,
$5,000.
it's an
Okay.
earnest money.
Well,
And
Miss-
he
Miss
does
Car-
not have the $5,000.
Ms. Carpenter is correct.
That is right.
Does he not have authority to spend $5,000?
Well,
Yeah, but we've got to give him authority.
hold on.
The money
Hold on.
lady has 5,000.
So we can skip this.
Oh, okay.
At our level, if we're comfortable,
Which we would do,
We're not approving the purchase of the property right now. We're just paying $5,000 to have an option to purchase.
correct.
but it doesn't need, what she's saying is it doesn't take board action. Is everybody okay with that? I'm fine with that.
We'll bring back the whole thing
Yeah.
next week for a
In
final
closed
decision.
session, we'll get an update and we'll
Right.
know. At some point in time, we'll have to have that discussion in open session.
Hopefully
Right.
next week.
Yes, hopefully next week. Okay, good.
Yes, sir.
Good. All right, so hold on. We will move on
Thank you.
to the board calendar. And that will be, who is doing that? Oh, Dr. Van Heukelum. You're up. Board members, this is the calendar that has been put together from, we do July to July. So this is starting Monday, July 7th. Historically, we've only had one meeting in July. So does anybody have a question? Does Jason need to go to the podium?
Well,
Or do it from
you know,
here?
my thoughts are we ought to have at least one or two of these meetings, if we can't have three, at some of our other facilities to showcase that, have an opportunity for the public to come out and talk to us. We've got a lot going on. There's opportunities there. So that'd be my preference.
Okay. Board members, any comments on that? And if you want to make a formal motion, you're certainly welcome to. I'm going to tell you.
I don't have specific schools
Okay.
in mind, other
Well,
than you
we
got
can-
Mount Pleasant as one, will be one of them.
Well, we can.
We've got a new school going in the, going out somewhere out northwest. That'd probably be another area to have a meeting as well. So.
Well, this only goes through June of 15, and that school's open in August of 15.
Right, but we'll have an opportunity. They'll know where the school is by then, though they may want to come talk to us about it.
Well,
maybe
Mr. Chairman, we've been through this already. Of course, now, I'm not going to be on this board past December anyway. And we done talked about the cost involved, the inconvenience, and Miss Monroe having to lug all of this stuff back and forth and with little or no help, and technology having to set things up, and some schools don't have it. And, with all respect, Rob, I appreciate what you're wanting to do here, because we do need to, the community does need to have access to the board, but we got a big boardroom here that they can come to, and our meetings are announced in the newspaper. They're on the website, and, and they got this facility that's in the center of the county to come to. And like I say, that's my feelings. But now I'm going to be off in December, so then we've only got, just a couple on here on this list.
We'll agree to disagree. I think we need to showcase our facilities. I think we need to reach out to the public in different areas of the county.
Well, we're on the same page there. Like I say, I won't be on the board then, so that's y'all's decision.
Okay. Well, as far as tonight goes, I mean, we've got a calendar that if we want to talk about it for another minute or two, we can put it on action for next week, or consent. And if next week you want to bring a motion to add or think about where you want to do, you're certainly welcome to do that.
Okay.
I'm going to tell you, I've I'm not in favor of moving the meetings around, but that's just me. But, now we're only going to have 5 of us, so Barry and Carolyn won't be able to vote on it. So, okay, well, Ms. Monroe, we'll put that on action. Okay, so the next thing is Carolyn has been busy at the Head Start training and would like her hours submitted to the NCSBA. And does anybody have any objection to submitting these hours to the NCSBA?
Can we table the calendar till I get back? Is there a way we can table it, or do we have to?
I would second that.
I don't think we're under a time crunch to set it,
Can
since
we
we have a
table it
schedule
till
all
I
the way
get
up
back?
till
I
July.
would make a motion that we table the calendar until the first meeting in May.
Okay, I have a motion to table the calendar.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor of tabling the calendar say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Okay, 6-1, so we'll table it.
Okay, just to May 1st. I mean, because I'll be back. Or, the meeting, that first meeting.
Yeah, we will put it on the agenda for May. Okay,
Whatever the May,
all right, let's wrap this up. So training hours, anybody have any objection to Carolyn's training hours? No, seeing none, we'll put that on the consent agenda. Carolyn, I will tell you that this is, I think, a couple different times, we probably need to check your board budget. So,
you don't have to pay for that.
oh, well, then
Yeah,
we won't have
it
to
didn't
check the
cost
board
you
budget.
one
Well,
cent.
then that's fantastic. I
That
just
didn't cost you
want to make
one
sure there's enough for everybody else when they want to
Yeah,
go
Head Start
somewhere.
pays for
So,
that. You don't have to pay one
okay,
cent.
I think we're done, board members. Oh, I'm sorry, 4.15. Jeff, go right ahead.
So you'll probably recall that at our last regular meeting, Nick Nostro came before us during the public comments and gave a request that we consider passing a resolution related to the 25% contracts. And I believe that part of what he was asking for was that we ask the legislature to basically rescind the law and instead allow us to use the money that would be coming to us to support salaries in whatever way we felt was appropriate. So I just wanted to have a discussion to kind of get a sense of the board as to whether there was a support for something like that or not. And if there is, then we could work on drafting up our own resolution to vote on.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. I guess I'll respond and then we'll open it up. I'm not in favor, some of the language that was used in what they gave us, I wasn't in favor of. However, I think it might be worth our while to have something to support our teachers. One of the things I did object to in the resolution he gave us, where it said there was not a fair way to determine the 25%. Well, you can argue whether we should be doing it, or whether this, that, and the other, but the process that we came up with was very fair. And so I didn't really want to pass something that said something that I didn't think was correct. So I would be in favor if somebody, or Jeff, if you would like to draft something that shows at least some support for our teachers and what we're trying to do. I'd like for them to grab whatever pay they can, but at the same time show them that we do support them. So if there's some way we can word that, I'd be in favor of that. But we can go. We'll start with Rob if you want to make a comment on that.
I mean, I'm certainly open to reading or considering it, but we've got at least several teachers that have applied for it the way it is, so I'm not in favor of changing things for us personally, but we can certainly consider a resolution, asking them to change their formula or whatever however it's been aligned up in Raleigh.
Here, it is getting late. I'm sitting there clicking. No, I'm definitely in favor of looking at it because as y'all remember, when I was out and I came back and I said no to the consent agenda, one reason I said no to the consent agenda was because of this, the 25% or this, and also one other thing on the consent agenda, but this was one of them. And one of my reasoning behind this was definitely, part of me says, we're saying we only have 25% good teachers. And I mean, that's the way it sounds. And so if there's some way we can get around that, the way that sounds, is that's what our system has. And we all know that that's not the case. We have got a lot more teachers than that. So some way wording it differently than that. And as you mentioned, we tried to be as fair as we possibly can. So some kind of wording we can put on there. You know, I'm willing to look at it because I didn't like the way it came down or way it looks. And I want to give as much support to our teachers as possible.
Okay. Barry, you going to comment on that?
Well, I agree with you, Carolyn, and I agree with Rob. And I agree with you bringing it up, Jeff. We got, Blake and I were able to sit with a group of folks from the larger school districts, and Wake County and Guilford County put out 2 resolutions in support of the teachers in this. I'd be willing to share that with you. I think there are elements of it that I really enjoyed, especially the way they built their district up and talked about, you know, the really positive things that were going on within the district, within the teachers, and how they were working together and that type of thing. And I think that if you look at both of those resolutions, I think there's a lot that we could glean and put into our resolution and then come up with whatever resolve that we have. Obviously, we've already got our process in place. We've already entered into the process of dealing with this now. But at the same time, we can still so support that, you know, it was a mechanical process that was dictated to us by the state legislature, and we're fulfilling our obligation to give anyone who wants that the opportunity to accept it. But at the same time, we don't agree with the platform at which it was offered to us. And I'll be willing to, I've got both of those right here. I'll forward those to you, and you can look at them.
Okay, thank you. Lynn?
Well, you know, the tenure law that's been around forever, you know, up until this come along, you know, it had its good points and had its bad points. The tenure did. But I don't like the idea, and I made this statement one time before, you know, I don't like the state to give a person a benefit and then take it away, or pay them to take it away. We're going to give you $500 a year for 4 years, but guess what? You lose tenure, which was a benefit for teachers, believe it or not. It was a benefit that they had. And there just seems to be, to me, this is a case here of government intervention on a local level, mandating us to do things and then making us choose. And we have a very rigorous process that we have put in place. And as Mr. Shoemaker very clearly stated, you know, we're already in that process because we're trying to comply with the law. But I'm willing to look at the resolution that Jeff's proposing and, you know, and do whatever we can in support of the teachers on the local level. And this, like I said, this is a good example here. People talk about, you know, we want less government in our life. Well, that pertains to teachers too. And so if we can come up with something that might help us in some way, help the teachers, then I'm all for that. So I'm willing to look at it. It obviously had to be an action agenda item simply because we'll have to look at the resolution and see what changes, if any, and it may even be it may even have to move on into the May meeting, because just look at it one time may not be sufficient. But that's just my thoughts on it.
Okay, thank you, Lynn. David, do you have any comments?
Well, this whole 25% thing is just messed up. It has been from day one. We've all known it. We've done the best we could within the confines of the law to have the process that we went through and created an extremely fair process by which we offer the 25% to our teachers and have gotten the responses that we need and can go forward from that. But the rubber hitting the road again with the state is that they need to see that probably every district in the state has got a tremendous number of great teachers. So this 25% was just arbitrary from the beginning. I mean, it was never accurate or made any sense to just pick 25%. And it puts school boards in the position of having to pick almost arbitrarily 25% when there are 3 times that many or more at any school system who are superior, stellar, excellent teachers. And if we can look at this and make some tangible, sensible statement to the state legislature, I think we ought to. But I want it to be material and actionable and meaningful and not symbolic. I want to pat all of our teachers on the back, but I want to pat them on the back in a constructive, real way that matters. And I don't want to pay lip service to the situation. I want it to be a document that we can be proud of and actually have real meaning at the state legislature level as they consider it and the other resolutions around the state. But it'll take something like that for Raleigh, the State House, the State Senate, and the Governor's Office and DPI, I guess, to think, well, maybe we should have done this a little bit different, and let's make some modifications to this law that certainly would be, anything would be more fair than 25%.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Well, I think we have, that's good support for providing a document that we can discuss, and it will be on the action agenda. So with that, board members, we have obviously somebody very smart working on it. So Jeff, we appreciate you working on that. And with that, I'd like to ask for a motion to adjourn. I have a motion by Mr. Harrison and a second by Ms. Carpenter. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? This meeting is adjourned.